Okay, boys, welcome back. It is. Are we calling it the weekend yet? Does Thursday count as the weekend, Pratik? You got to issue a ruling here as someone who maybe recognizes weekends.
I sleep till noon every day, so it doesn't matter to me.
Okay, all right. So maybe not officially the weekend, but grab some beers after work today. Anyway, we have a lot to cover. Packed episode, great segment coming afterwards, but we need to. I'm going to rattle off some stuff and tell me what I forgot. So I think we need to talk about Wisconsin. Ron John looking like he's still king there. JD Vance and Tim Ryan. One of the more watchable debates I can remember, if you can even go that far. I think some version of peak woke and then the collapse in Los Angeles, and upsets brewing. Everyone likes an upset in a couple states. And then, of course, John Fetterman in Pennsylvania kind of coming out of the basement and giving traders a lot of questions about his fitness, literally, to be the next senator from Pennsylvania. What am I missing?
That sounds good. I also watched the North Carolina debate. Talk about that.
Did you find that eminently watchable and entertaining as well?
No, it was awful.
Like more awful than your weekend plans?
Well, I will say, actually, it did give me betting insight, so it was useful to watch. We can talk about that.
Useful to watch. I would love a good utilitarian argument. Okay, so I've got this broken up into Would You Rather. It's been a while since we played a little Would You Rather, so buckle up and let's start in Wisconsin, okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so first up, I don't take this lightly. I never take it lightly when we talk about the Dunn chain, but I'm thinking that maybe we should start thinking about hanging that Dunn chain around the neck of some of these campaigns that just aren't getting off the ground. So with that as pretext, I'm going to start in Wisconsin. I'm going to quote literally Marquette University Law School's recent poll that many of you saw, quote, "New Marquette Law School poll finds a wider margin in the U.S. Senate race than the poll a month ago, with Republican Ron Johnson supported by 52% and Democrat Mandela Barnes by 46% among likely voters. In September, it was Johnson 49, Barnes 48. The marketplace on Predicted is reacting to this bigly. I see traders in the comments hanging that Dunn chain around Mandela Barnes' neck. But I want to frame that up against Ohio. Can we talk about your favorite candidate, JD Vance?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. In the eminently watchable Ohio debate, Tim Ryan, Democrat challenger, said about JD Vance, quote, "I'm from Ohio. I don't kiss anyone's ass like him. I'm an ass kicker. He's an ass kisser." So far, that's probably the top viral zinger of the election season. And it comes at the same time that Vance, despite being a favorite on paper, Trump won Ohio by 8 points in 2020, just can't get out of, at least according to polls, what looks like a neck-and-neck race with Tim Ryan. So a lot of pretext. But my question to you is, I said we don't take the Dunn chain lightly, but are you hanging the Dunn chain on Mandela Barnes, Democrat in Wisconsin, or JD Vance, Republican in Ohio?
Well, look, I mean, the markets now are at 80-20 for Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. So, I mean, I think you and I have both been fairly confident that Johnson would pull this out. And I think certainly it was the right play to go along on the Republicans here when it was around a 50-50 market. But, I mean, I do think that we have to ask, I mean, just how much is worth paying for this one for a race that, has been close, and even now, I mean, it's by no means a done deal. I mean, 80-20 sounds about right for me. I would maybe pay it up to 85-15, but given all the other opportunities, I don't know that that's the one I really want to get involved with at this price.
I think the market's also pricing in that most sharp traders know that the polls in the Midwest are completely fake, that they usually miss by longer than a Jamarcus Russell Hail Mary pass. So yeah, I think if the polls show these races even close, traders are just assuming that there'll be very comfortable wins for Republicans in the Midwest.
Yeah, I mean, you see that with the current Nevada Senate and governor prices. I mean, I think the polling I've seen shows it's basically neck and neck, but now, I mean, the Republicans are favored 63-37 to win in Nevada over a competent incumbent senator. So, I think one can ask, questions about Republican bias right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if
Yeah.
you look at Nate Silver's odds, they don't even remotely reflect what you're seeing unpredicted. So do with that what you will. JD Vance, your favorite candidate, Republican JD Vance. I actually sort of intentionally put this on the sheet because I don't think that you can ever hang the done chain on a Republican in a state that Trump won by 8. But I do think it's a really important question, which is my personal opinion. Tim Ryan, Democrat, got absolutely fed into the partisan wood chipper for the entirety of this debate. But he produced this one moment, which is the only moment that anyone remembers. And like, let's be honest, no one watches these debates. So I guess I'm sort of asking who won this debate, and is this still a real race?
So I mean, I don't know. I guess I didn't really think. I think both of them basically held their own. Like I don't think anyone really dramatically over or underperformed that debate. I agree. Ryan's getting more social media clips out of it, I guess. Um, but I think the core kind of thesis I have about this race remains unchanged, which is that I mean the market's right now trading 78, 22, 23 in favor of JD Vance, even though we've seen throughout the cycle that the race has been a coin flip. Now, I think a coin flip in terms of polling here could potentially mean something different elsewhere, given that Ryan has held his own despite the fact that National Democrats basically have not been putting all that much money into this race. So if he can maintain close polling, we don't see a red wave, and then at the last minute, National Democrats finally realize that maybe this is a race worth investing in. I think JD probably is going to remain the favorite, but at the current market odds, I like the underdog here.
I think that JD did something important in this debate too, because like, who are the people who watch debates? Partisans, degens, and probably the type of person who writes large checks to political campaigns. Like I would think that they would want to see their candidate and make sure that they're not idiots. And there's definitely just been this stink that's hung over these Peter Thiel Trump candidates, and I thought JD sort of proved himself not to be some weird psychotic Borg of like butthurt triggered right wing Silicon Valley bros. So I do think he got something out of that. But did he persuade any voters? I don't know. I mean, do you think any voters even watch these things?
I don't know. I mean, I think if something notable had happened, maybe I think what you're saying is probably correct. That I think both of them more or less kind of made a credible pitch to donors who have been on the fence that they're real, viable, serious candidates. I
Okay.
don't know that there's much more beyond that.
So I took one more thing from this race, and I think we're both landing on the done chain is on Mandela Barnes. It's not yet out for Ohio. I think that like, did you not notice Tim Ryan's facial expressions?
What about them?
Like, he has the facial expressions of someone who's like 13 years old max. Like he literally looks like he's wearing his dad's clothes to work.
You know what I've noticed in our conversations?
What?
I think there's something about Tim Ryan that particularly irritates you. There's like a rage in your voice when we talk about Tim Ryan as opposed to anyone else,
Well, he's an idiot. That's what annoys me about him.
as opposed to every other member of Congress.
No. He's like especially an idiot. He's legit. Like, come on, like you watch that debate. He's not a smart guy.
You know, I mean, I don't know. Did you watch North Carolina?
No. Well, you just told me like that I should jump off a fucking bridge before I watch that.
Well, I guess the point is like I wouldn't say that Ted Budd is some genius either, but
Yeah.
like I think he very much held his own. I think he showed he can read the talking points, be kind of a generic Republican. I mean, Tim Ryan is not in an easy position running as a Democrat in this kind of environment in Ohio. Uh, I don't know that anyone's voting for Tim Ryan because they're expecting like a guy with a PhD from Yale, but he's a former quarterback. And I think he did what he needed to do. I mean, there was
So
nothing. Yeah.
I'm completely on the other side of this issue. I think Tim Ryan is I think he's the dupe. I feel like the Democrats who were too big of weenies to challenge Pelosi themselves were like, oh, Tim Ryan's an idiot. We can get him to run against Nancy Pelosi so that we can all have cover. And so he did that. And now they're like, well, we'll get him to run for Senate in Ohio, even though he's an idiot and he can't win. Like, we'll make the Republicans defend their seat by running him, but like really game over Tim Ryan. So I think he's a lamb. I think he's perpetually being led to slaughter. And I think he has the facial expressions of a 13-year-old and always looks really anxious and sweaty.
Does something happen when you were on the Hill, like some issue with you and Tim Ryan?
No. I am truth. When I speak truth. And this is what's going on. Okay, well, do you want to talk about other people looking kind of dumb during debates?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, so I think it's beyond the powers of this podcast right now to really get into this LA City Council issue of I guess it's like, basically it's like a race war on the LA City Council. That's what you got out of it too, right?
Well, you should tell the story for people who didn't catch it. I mean, this was really something.
I mean, it was really something, and it was also one of those things where you're like, yeah, I kind of figured that's how it was, but like, damn, I didn't realize it was that bad. So I guess for those of you who didn't follow this story, during a Los Angeles City Council meeting, a couple of the trigger warning, this will be a story about racial grievances in politics. A couple of the Latino candidates were like talking shit, or not candidates, but council members were like talking shit about Mike Bonin, who shout out Richie of PI. Richie of PI trolls Mike Bonin every single day on Twitter, but like basically making fun of him for having a black son. And basically talking about Los Angeles city politics like it's explicitly a race war and like how they can maneuver for advantage over other races or something like that. So it's, again, basically probably what you thought the LA City Council was, except like much worse. Did I get the essence of it there?
Yeah, and I also just want to say that I think we need some thoughts and prayers for Richie. I mean, I think COVID quite literally broke him from his Twitter account, but yeah, I think you got the LA story right.
I think we need a lot of thoughts and prayers for Richie. So Richie also this made Mike Bonin into a hero, and for Richie and actually for many residents of West Los Angeles, Mike Bonin was kind of like the Antichrist superstar. So I personally was very triggered by Mike Bonin being portrayed as a hero. I don't even want to talk about it. It's very disruptive to my emotional stability.
Okay, but so I think you.
So we need to do a podcast. Yeah.
It sounds like where you're going with this is you think there's an insight here for the LA mayor race.
Yes. Thank you. You're an excellent podcast host and producer. Thank you, Pratik. I was going to ask you a would you rather about whether or not we've hit peak woke. Do we do that on this podcast?
Okay.
Okay. So this week in the Los Angeles mayor's debate, so refresher course, billionaire Rick Caruso, who's not a Republican, he basically just like wears a T-shirt that says "I'm not a Republican," but he was a Republican for his whole life. But he's a Democrat now, apparently. Anyway, billionaire candidate Rick Caruso corrected the moderator who referred to him as white. It's like hilarious and cringy. He goes, "No, I'm Italian," and like the moderator is like, "What?" And he's like, "It's Latin. I'm Italian. It's Latin." So anyway, billionaire white men from Orange County seeking to define themselves as Latino. That feels pretty peak woke to me. And then, do you follow the Lord of the Rings?
I saw the Twitter outrage over it, but I don't think I've ever actually seen any of the movies.
Well, do you want to remind the boys why people are triggered by the Lord of the Rings TV show on Twitter?
I don't even know actually if I fully caught the story, but my understanding is that. Okay, so tell me if I'm getting this right, but I think Lord of the Rings is like sociologically kind of a white people thing generally, and then like the characters are white, but then the woke people substituted a character who's black. I mean, is that like kind of what's going on?
Yeah. They basically like cast the new Lord of the Rings TV show like the people you'd see in a restoration hardware store in San Francisco or something like that. So anyway, Amazon spent like $800 million on this, and you've got these, the super fans who are going to be pissed off no matter what. So you've got the super fans who are just kind of pissed off because that's what they do. And then like the Fox News crowd has like really rallied a lot of opposition to it based on casting elves as like black people. So to kind of stop the bleeding, the Amazon people gave the show's writers to the Hollywood Reporter to respond to criticisms. And again, this is a question about, have we hit peak woke? The only question on this issue that the writers took was, why do some of the characters have short hair and shaved heads? Like, they wouldn't even address it. They wouldn't even address the thing that people are bitching about. So I guess that's my question to you: is peak woke like a white rich guy in Orange County claiming to be Latino, or is it Amazon just not even acknowledging the issue that their fans have, whether they're right or wrong to have the issue?
Okay, so you're way more of an LA expert than I am, so I want to actually ask you a bit more about
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
So I, since early in this race, have been betting on Caruso, basically on the assumption that, number one, he's an eminently serious guy who's going to run a good campaign and money isn't an issue. But number two, and more importantly, that with issues like crime and homelessness as being factors, that this might be the kind of race where um, an outsider could topple an establishment candidate like Karen Bass.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, the markets are, still about 75-25 or something in favor of Karen Bass. Now, what I did not understand, and I think this is maybe because I don't actually know Caruso personally, was the calling himself Italian, like that, I don't know, maybe that's funny, maybe it's a joke, maybe whatever. Like, I grew up in a fairly Italian Catholic state. But what was he talking about when he added the Latin part? Like, that's what confused me.
Well, I mean, the Latins were a tribe of people that predated the Romans in the area that's called Rome now.
Yeah,
So,
but like, what was the point he was trying to communicate, or is he just
I mean, I
like a
think I,
nerd?
I mean, I think that was the point. Like, I think that was like literally him trying to say, "I'm not William F. Buckley." Like I think he was trying to claim some sort of shared heritage with Hispanics. Like, to me, he
So
was
it
like,
wasn't like a troll or a dog whistle or something like that.
no, 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 no. I think that's. I think. I mean, I think he's clearly been saying that on the campaign trail. Like, my Italian people, and when I was born in 1950, they treated us like we weren't Americans, and like whatever that speech is. So I think
And is that a thing that people in LA care about?
No, I think what people care about is having like infinite hyphenated identities. And I think that's his way of saying, or thinking he's saying, that like, I'm more like you than I am like a Trump supporter in Mississippi, or one of William F. Buckley's relatives in Newport, Rhode Island.
I don't even know.
I think it's peak woke.
Yeah, I mean, like an Italian Catholic identity is a very old phenomenon in American politics, especially in machine politics and so forth. This Latin thing, no idea. Until I hear more, I mean, I don't know that my thesis about this race has fundamentally changed. But yeah, maybe you're right. I don't know. Maybe it
Yeah.
is just woke excess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like I gave way too much lip service to Amazon's weird woke politics with the Lord of the Rings. So can we just like skip talking about that more? Or do you want to comment on that?
Well, I will say, I mean, for those of you who are in like predicted Twitter, Flip Pideaux made some very bold picks in the Senate races, basically thinking that he thinks there's going to be a red wave, and he basically took a bunch of action and side bets and sort of thinking that the Republicans are much more favored. Now, we'll have to talk to Flip, but I think that, as you and I have talked about, I think if there is a significant surprise in November, I think it may end up being bigger Republican gains than what people are saying. And I think it's precisely because of stories like this Amazon thing. I think you're very astute to bring it up, because I think these are the kinds of issues that really are riling people up today. And it's not the kind of issue that's going to be legislated in front of Congress, but it absolutely is an issue that that will shape how people vote. So what you were saying, I didn't catch it until you had told me, but the fact that what Hollywood is doing, or the movie producers are doing, not even addressing an issue of obvious concern to their consumers, I think that's kind of a metaphor for a lot of establishments being out of touch in certain issues.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking like I wanted to write a piece this week, but then I got super busy. Sorry, email list people. But it just seems like there's so many stories over and over again where it's just like there's no allowance to talk about what the actual issue is, because the actual issue is going to offend people. And for the most part, like, you guys know that I've got a hack in me, and you know that I like to say mean things about woke Democrats and limousine liberals and stuff. But, like, for example, Ted Cruz was on that shitty show, The Circus. You remember that show on Showtime?
I never actually watched it, but I mean, I'm familiar with it.
So that one grifter guy, Tim Miller, was like questioning him about whether or not he denied the election, which he did. And Ted Cruz is like, "Why are you asking me that? That's a stupid, that's a stupid question," without answering the question. It's like, why are we not allowed to ask questions? Like, so many obvious questions you're not allowed to answer. And I guess if you're Amazon, like, you're not going to address, except it's literally what everyone is asking. So I just think there's no constituency for this among normal people, and that there will be consequences.
I mean, this actually, in a sense, ties into the North Carolina debate. And I told you it was boring, but actually it was very interesting that Sherry Beasley, I mean, over and over again went out of her way to, not associate herself with Biden or National Democrats and so forth. And like, Bud tried to accuse her of supporting defund the police, and she just totally shut that down. Said, like, I don't support defunding the police. Then she went on about the importance of funding the police. Likewise, I mean, on border immigration, she more or less sounded like a Republican did. I mean, no real difference. So I am waiting for kind of the moment where Democrats realize that this woke culture or cancel culture thing is basically the equivalent of defund the police and, whatever else. It's just like a liability that they have no interest in maintaining. But for whatever reason, you haven't really seen national Democrats come to the realization that they need to address this. And it may end up requiring a setback in the midterms or something before they go there.
I think you might be wrong about this, though. I mean, think about how many times Republicans have received the message that people don't want to vote for them because they're aligned with wacko religious fundamentalists. I mean, this is wacko religious fundamentalism by a different name. And like, time and time again, the Republicans have doubled down on that because it's an easy way to get votes and an easy way to win primaries. Why would the incentives be different for the Democrats?
Because I don't actually believe that the universe of true believing woke people is the equivalent of the religious right with their organization and so forth. And even the religious right, I mean, okay, they put Bush over the top in 2004. They're kind of, I would say they're probably declining in influence as well. I don't know. I don't know.
But like, every time you walk into a yoga studio or a coffee shop and there's like, all are welcome here, or there's like that one flag, or like Black Lives Matter, or like all these like social justice monikers, like, I view that completely the same as people who hang like a cross with the 10 Commandments and are organized. Like, these places all have email lists. These places all have, regular customers and community and stuff like that. I think that there's ample infrastructure there to support and nurture these movements going forward, just in a way that we're not used to seeing.
So your view is like Tim Ryan, Sherry Beasley, etc., can go on a debate stage and throw the defund the police people under the bus and say that they support border security, etc., but were they to denounce cancel culture, they would pay a meaningful price for it?
I think on yes, but also that they'll pay that price because they'd rather win those voters in the primary than lose them in the general election.
Yeah, so maybe the equivalent is more like the
abortion.
Way Republicans deal with, I was going to say like voter fraud or
exactly.
big lie kind of stuff.
Or like hardcore Second Amendment people who are like, no, like, everyone should have a machine gun because it's like all those issues that they know cost them in the general election, but they bear hug during the primaries for easy votes. I think that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, that's I suppose that's the other notable thing worth mentioning about the debates. Now, we've seen it with Arizona, Ohio, North Carolina. I mean, I think the prediction we had made a few months ago, we don't quite know, but I think it's bearing out. I don't think Republicans are going to die on the hill on this abortion issue. I think they're they're already backtracking. We'll see if it works, but
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Should we go back to picking elections that people can bet on?
Okay.
Thank you, by the way, for indulging me in that. I feel like you really like made something out of that. I don't know that I really brought it on that, but you did, Pratik. going to give you a kiss on the cheek the next time I see you. All right, so I've got next. I've got upset of the
please
week.
don't, but yeah.
You're not affectionate.
Uh,
I guess that's a no.
no.
Upset of the week. Okay, so I'm going to quote the Washington Post about your home state of Rhode Island. Quote, Alan Fung, he's a Republican that we've talked about before on this podcast. Alan Fung is threatening to break through the blue wall of New England, which has been Democratic stronghold for nearly 2 decades. 2 recent polls have shown Fung, a popular former mayor and the Republican, with a slight lead in, what is it, Rhode Island 2? It's Jim Langevin's old district. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. So possible upset brewing in Rhode Island. Second, this is a real doozy here. So I'm going to go to Utah, and I'm going to quote The Hill, where they said, quote, among likely voters, the race remained largely unchanged, with Mike Lee's the incumbent Republican, Mike Lee leading McMullen. Evan McMullen is the, what do we call him? Is he says he's a Republican, right? But he's like a never Trump Republican or something. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I'm not actually even sure if he's still a Republican. He used to be. I think he might have left the party. But yeah, I mean, he's basically a never Trump
Right.
sort of a Republican.
Right. The important piece of information for this first half of the sentence is that the Senate race there is between a Republican and a Evan McMullen, never Trump Republican or independent. So among likely voters, the race remained largely unchanged, with Lee leading McMullen 42% to 37%. And 12% of respondents stating that they were undecided. And this is coming at the same time that there's these stories about Mike Lee. Apparently, he went on Tucker Carlson and was like begging on live TV for Mitt Romney to endorse him and help him. So like he's clearly worried that he's going to lose. And then just today, Trump finally came through with an endorsement for your boy Mike Lee and an anti-endorsement of Evan McMullen. So I guess my question to you is, who is more likely to pull the upset here, this Alan Fung guy or this Evan McMullen guy in Utah?
Oh, I would say Fung for sure. I mean, I think this, I'll get into the Fung issue in a minute, but I would say, like, of all the underpriced favorites on Predicted right now, one could make a very reasonable argument that this Utah one with Mike Lee is maybe the most attractive one. Right now, it's trading at 86.14 for the Republicans. I would put Mike Lee closer to like 95.5 kind of favorite. I think
Why
this is
don't they hate Donald Trump in Utah?
Well, I mean, Trump won Utah twice.
Yeah.
The point is that the point. Look, even if a full-on Trump candidate were running with the Republican nomination, I think they would probably win. But Mike Lee is an incumbent. He's respected. He has a brand that's very distinct from Trump. He obviously has a temperament that's different. He's competent by all standards, and we're looking at a Republican-friendly year. I don't buy it. I don't think he's vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a strict comparison, Alan Fung is running in an open seat, so no incumbent. It's always an easier game, or usually an easier game.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I will say, I mean, I think national media is kind of seizing on this race because they think, oh, maybe it's like an indicator of a red wave coming or something like that. I'm from this Rhode Island 2 district. I grew up there. I mean, a big part of what's going on here is more of a local thing, and Mike Stenhouse had talked about this on our podcast a few weeks ago. But the bottom line is that Fung is a mayor of Cranston, which is the biggest city in the district here, whereas the Democratic candidate Seth Magaziner, he was a statewide official, the state treasurer, but really his political base is more in Providence and in other parts of the areas, which aren't directly tied to the second district. So I think he just doesn't actually have as much of a relationship or a brand in this district. So I think Fung certainly could win. I just wouldn't read a lot into it.
Okay, but we don't have a place to bet on that yet. So do you want to just produce some odds out of the space between your ears?
I would say is around a 50-50 market.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the more likely of the two, for what it's worth. Mike Lee is Mike Lee. He's been likely for a while. Um, that is a taller mountain to climb, Evan McMullen. Um, are we good with that, or do we need to say more?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. By the way, I was going to read it on air, but that's a waste of time. You guys really should go read Donald Trump's endorsement of Mike Lee and his anti-endorsement of Evan McMullen. Like, even by Trump standards, it's really an all-time great. Evan McMuffin is what he calls him. So, get some popcorn. Okay, so we owe the boys a little bit of a conversation about John Fetterman. So let's go there. So, do you have a favorite LBJ quote, Pratik?
No, I think
Really?
he was this is beyond the scope of our podcast. I have a pretty low opinion of LBJ, both as a president and a person.
It's interesting because LBJ was when, like, I remember in undergrad, like every professor trashed him as the worst ever. And, now we're in an era of history where people kind of smile on him fondly. So go figure. But I thought every Politico had an LBJ quote. Like, there's one where he literally says, "I'd rather like bang a guy in the ass just so he knows I'm in charge," or something like that. Just like a famously profane guy. And you don't even have one.
None that come to mind.
Okay.
You've told me a couple good ones over the years. I just don't remember.
I'd rather have a guy pissing in the tent than out of the tent. He's just anyway. Okay, well,
I
he
didn't
said
know that was an LBJ one. Well, there you go.
maybe he just co-opted it. Jerry Ford is so dumb he can't fart and chew gum at the same time. He's a very colorful character. Anyway, so he said about Gerald Ford, president of the United States. I think he was the House Republican leader when LBJ was in the White House. He said, quote, "He's a nice guy, but he played too much football with his helmet off." Obviously, like, an offense to his intelligence. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about Georgia and Pennsylvania. So nice guy, but played too much football with his helmet off. So I think given some of the scandals following Herschel Walker's candidacy, like, a lot of us are wondering if maybe he played too much football with his helmet off while he was in Georgia. And speaking, not joking, but speaking truthfully about traumatic brain injuries, Pennsylvania candidate John Fetterman just survived a stroke. And he just gave an interview this week that sounded like he was still a long way from making a full recovery. It really triggered the marketplace on PredictIt. That's like a 50-50 market as of recording now, after him being a 75-25 favorite. So based on his visible and audible struggles, based on Herschel Walker's major lapses of political intelligence, I guess I want to ask you, which candidate who's experienced some sort of neurological trauma do you think is in a position to actually win his race in November?
Oh, I mean, I think they could both win. The question is, what is the right pricing? So, like you said, Pennsylvania now, I think for the first time, if I recall, it's basically 50-50 now. Fetterman's maintained a pretty steady lead in the markets. Whereas Georgia, we're looking at 61-39-ish race favoring the Democrats. I mean, I think I told you recently on a pod that I thought Fetterman has Dr. Oz has a real chance of winning, and that it was worth getting in. But I think 50-50 is about right. I wouldn't buy one way or the other anymore here. Whereas I continue to think Georgia is more attractive for Warnock. I mean, every poll is showing him ahead. I think we're not even at the beginning. We're not anywhere close to the end of attack ads and dirt coming on Herschel Walker. I think the next major milestone is going to be the debates in these races. And just given the expectations on the table, I have a lot more confidence in Fetterman pulling it together rather than Herschel Walker really having an outstanding performance. So that's kind of where I am on the betting.
Would you be interested in doing like a side bet, maybe like maybe if I win, you have to go to Taco Bell with me?
What's the bet?
That regardless of John Fetterman's health, the Philadelphia Inquirer and Pittsburgh Post-Gazette will endorse him.
Oh, I mean, is there any doubt?
But I mean, it is like, that's the funny question though, isn't it? It's like he is not well. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, it was that NBC reporter right? Who I mean, the raw footage of it is really jarring. I mean, this is not like one of those Biden stumbles or something. I mean, it's pretty clear Fetterman just isn't there. But this NBC reporter definitely added fuel to the fire. I mean, she could have downplayed it or whatever else, but it was really damning coverage and reporting, and the Twitter uh, clips that are going viral. Uh,
I mean,
so
he
yeah,
literally can't talk. Like, he has to read what people are saying to him. Like,
yeah, I would simply say, I mean, go watch the actual video. Like it is jarring. That's what I'll say about that. Look, it's entirely possible. I mean, I think to give the market prices credit in Pennsylvania, if that NBC video is any indication whatsoever of what Fetterman's health and situation will be come the debate, to think that he can hold up in a 1 hour debate, um, live debate, it's certainly not a place I want to bet, and it could very well be that he melts down to the point that Oz runs away from it, like with it. Like I don't think that's out of the question.
I will also, like, I will say this at the risk of sounding like a bad person, but I will say it also as an experience I've had in my life. So I've had to work with someone who had I've had the pleasure of working with someone who had like a severe neurological degenerative disorder. And when that person needed to perform and he was in a performance role, like, it would take days to sync up his medications correctly so that they could be kind of at their peak while battling a condition that's like not dissimilar from what Fetterman is dealing with right now. I also sometimes wonder about that with the president too, if it's like, well, he can't give a joint address on that because like the meds won't sync up for another couple days or something. But like, it's a real thing. Like, you don't know what you're going to get with some of these things. And one of you out there is a doctor, and you're going to tell me I'm full of shit. I'm just telling you after working with like one person.
Well, we
That
are political betters after all, so would you take it? I mean, what would you do with a 50-50 market here?
oh
Or
well, I
what
mean,
are you doing?
we've been a pro Oz podcast for a while, but I at this price I've sold everything. I'm completely out of this market. I'm taking my gains on Oz. 50-50 is fine for me right now.
You
Uh,
know, I'm gonna put in some buy orders, maybe like in the, I don't know, low to mid 40s
yeah,
for Oz or the Republicans, because I think, you know, I think I don't think at this point Fetterman's going to run away with it. Like I
yeah.
think Oz is showing himself to be a competent enough candidate, and I think he has enough momentum from national trends that I think it can be close. Um, but given how much the market's panicked from the NBC thing, I don't think this is really the time to be buying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I figure a race that's this closely watched and with this much money in it, there's probably a few swings left in it. There's probably a few bad polls. There's probably a, viral Freudian slip or something. Like, there's probably a few of those things left. So it's like, this is not a buy at 50-50 race to me. This is a buy, on a swing, or just maybe buy if one candidate runs away from it. It's like 85-15.
Yeah, and I mean the prices are nowhere near as attractive now than they were even a few weeks ago, but I mean right now Pennsylvania trading at 18% unpredicted to be the closest Senate race. Um I I don't know if that's the right price, but I think I'm probably willing to buy maybe in the mid-teens here, but I think it's more likely to be close than Georgia, which remains the front runner in that
You,
market.
you know what I bought today?
What?
I bought North Carolina.
Oh, interesting. So let me well, okay,
But
why don't you say more there?
I've never really had any reason to be impressed with Ted Budd. And I just, I've seen the polls. I don't know how fake they are. I don't think Ted Budd is a superstar. I've heard positive things about Sherry Beasley. I think it's in the mix for some weird hanky panky. And at 7 cents, I said, you know what, Keen Dog, take a flyer on this.
So that was my view actually until I watched the debate. And what I would say is that I didn't know a lot about either of these candidates, but I kept hearing over and over again that Ted Budd is dumb, he's running a bad campaign, he's unimpressive, etc. Um, I don't think anyone wants to like charge at the barricades for Ted Budd, but I thought he was basically a very kind of disciplined, competent, reasonable, generic Republican candidate. He said the right things. I thought he performed well enough, and I think in a year that was very much favoring the Democrats in a place like North Carolina, Beasley certainly is a talented enough politician to be able to win. But I think that from what I saw in that debate, if my assumption is right that we're seeing a pretty strong Republican year, I no longer really believe that this one is in serious contention for the Democrats. So I'm gonna say, I mean, I'll look up the market price right now, 78.22, favoring the Republicans. I would say if you can get in on the Republicans in the mid 70s, I'm inclined to take that bet right now.
Wow, bro, you just rained all over my parade.
You might be right. I just after that debate, I don't see it. Maybe if you get a chance to watch it, we can revisit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm not really traded in this market in the most principled way. I'm holding North Carolina and Colorado, which requires some pretty wild dynamics to slip in for those two states to be the big dogs.
I mean, yeah, in this predicted market on the closest race, I actually like Colorado at 4 cents a lot. That's where I would like to see orders get filled.
Yeah, I got it at 5. So maybe you're just maybe I'm just a little dumber than you. Super smart money here, this Pratik Chogli guy. Okay, we are already over time, so I'm allotting you 5 minutes to talk about the CFTC. I think you have something to say, and then we're going to ship it out to our segment.
Oh, I mean, I don't even need 5 minutes, but I would just say this past Tuesday, the chairman of the CFTC, Rostam, basically he did an interview at FinTech DC, and actually the moderator, to my surprise, asked him specifically about prediction markets. So I would check that out. Maybe I'll post the video. But basically what he said, he explained what the issue was. And then he went on to basically say that like it's high on his priority list. That was a direct quote, high on priority list. He said he acknowledged that technology is allowing a quote whole different cohort of investors to get involved with these markets. He acknowledged and talked about political risk affecting small, medium, and large businesses and how that's something that has to be hedged. He gave COVID as an example. I think the point is that he it's pretty clear that he is well versed in the arguments for why these markets are different, why they might be permitted to operate. I got the impression watching that video that basically his concern is whether or not they can give the go-ahead to these markets on the basis of public interest, given that the statute they're operating under pretty clearly says no gaming, no gambling. So I think what I took away from it is I certainly did not get the impression that he's a full-on ideologue on this issue one way or the other. And so my view is if you're on the fence about thinking whether or not this is worth your lobbying or engagement or whether or not the CFTC is listening to the arguments, my view, at least based on that interview, is the commission is trying to make a deliberate, informed decision. And I would say if you care about these markets, you want them to be legal, continue to expand. I would say do whatever you can between now through the end of the month to help shape the CFTC's view.
Bank it, bro. Okay, all right, let's get out of here and get to part 2.